Hello, welcome to the Sovereign Magazine show. I'm Nicole George, your host, and we are a transformational experience where conscious conversations meet embodied wisdom. Each episode invites visionary healers, thought leaders, and change makers to share their journeys of awakening, offering listeners practical tools and soul-stirring insights to reclaim their inner authority. And so today we have back Stephanie Silva. Last time we were talking about coming home to your body. So if you missed that episode, definitely go check it out because today we're going to be building on that foundation and we're going to be talking about the language of desire. And so, Steph, why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll go into defining desire and what does that mean or even look like?
Yes, so hi everyone. My name is Steph. I am a sex, intimacy, and relationship coach and founder of a sensual wellness practice called Awaken Arousal. And at Awaken Arousal, I love to help people embrace their vulnerability, shed light on shame as it often lives in the dark, and really help people kind of lean into their most safe, satisfying, authentic, and liberated love lives and help people kind of move into alignment in their intimate worlds with their values. So yeah, and I love that we're talking about desire today and the language of desire. And personally, like when I'm speaking about the language of desire, I'm not really talking about like dirty talk or sexy words or anything like that. I'm more talking about learning what type of desire you have. There are two main types, and how your desire actually communicates with you. So that could be through your body, through emotions, energy, sensation, and maybe even behavior. So it is very unique to every individual in this. Big part of what I do, helping people kind of dive into that deeply and get to know what that means to them. So,
Yes, and I'm sure for those who are new to your world that they're like, oh my gosh, what are the two types? So just so you know, we did a full hour episode with Stephanie and her front cover issues. So that is also on our channel as well if you want a deeper dive. Ooh, there's a little bug there. Um, Once again, embracing the flaws and we're not AI. Um,
nope.
so why don't you go ahead and share what, the language of desires types are?
Yeah, absolutely. So, when we're talking about like the two types of desire that I talk quite a bit about on my page and in my practice, they're called spontaneous and responsive. And honestly, knowing this and helping and teaching my clients this has been a game changer. So I'll just give like a brief rundown of what each of them are. So spontaneous is kind of what I would say most people are familiar with. It is what well, yeah, most people have at the beginning of a partnership I guess a connection as well. It doesn't have to be a relationship. Um, so that is when you could say, let's just say, see someone attractive and immediately feel like turned on, so to speak, and kind of want to run to the bedroom. So it's what you see in movies and whatnot when it's like hot and heavy at the beginning. And I like to say that spontaneous desire is kind of like a light switch, like you just kind of like can flick it on. Whereas the other type, responsive, is more in response to either connection, context, environment, could be how like whether the communication in the relationship is going well and things like that. So it's more like starting a fire. So you've got to gather the wood, you've got to place the wood in a certain way, you've got to light the match and tend to the fire. It can also go out quickly. So that is kind of, I hope that explains like kind of the difference between spontaneous and responsive. Um, and also I don't like to say like things in black and white, but most women would be categorized under responsive and most men would be spontaneous. I'm spontaneous, so I don't fall into that. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, so spontaneous is more of like a top-down approach. Like the brain kind of says, yeah, I'm ready for intimate time, and then the genitals turn on, and then it's the opposite for responsive. So you have to sort of start to feel something in the body before your brain then says, like, okay, I'm ready to go to the bedroom now. So yeah.
Okay. And my wheels were going at one point. I was like, oh, fix your face, Nicole. You look like you're concentrating so hard.
Uh-huh.
And that was because I was trying to figure out, I'm like, what am I? And which one am I?
Yeah.
And which one is my husband? I was trying
Hmm.
to figure it out. I think if I had to guess, I think we're both responsive.
Okay.
Um,
Can I ask you a
I,
question or?
yeah, yeah.
Well, would you say that you think about sex often?
Not since perimenopause. No.
Okay. And then I would say
Yes.
ask your husband the same question. And then yeah, I would probably ask you more questions if we were kind of like
Yeah,
going
you can if you
into
want, if that's interesting to you. I'm an open book.
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. So you said you're pretty sure you're responsive, and you don't think about sex too often.
Yeah.
So when you do find yourself, I'll say in the mood, what are some things that you can maybe note about what has happened in that day or what is happening in your body in those moments? Like, I don't know if you can, in this
Yeah.
moment, point that,
You're going
but
to be totally surprised by this or not. It's
mhm.
actually your book club.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yes, yes. So Stephanie has an amazing book club. For anybody who is loves to read or maybe didn't even know that they love to read, like me, I didn't know I loved to read until I found the right genre. And I just love really simple romance with a little bit of spice. Could have a lot of spice, but it doesn't even matter how much spice there is for me.
Yeah,
So I love Steph's book club called Booked and Bound, if anybody wants to join.
love it.
Um, but what I have noticed is that there is a part of, I don't want to necessarily say fantasizing because I'm not fantasizing about it, but in that reading of those books, that gets me excited and thinking about it again, right? It's almost like
Yeah.
we're moving through our days and we're just like ticking off the boxes of like, okay, I made it to that meeting, drop the kids off, cook, whatever. And then by the time we get to the end of the day, it's like, okay, good night, right? And that's
Yeah,
just just how it is right now. It's not
yeah.
normally this busy for my husband and I, but right now it's particularly busy. And so
Busy season.
I do notice when we're slower, when we slow down and we
Mhm.
don't have as much packed into our schedule, when I'm reading more,
Yeah,
then things are a lot more active, I will say.
yeah.
And I tend to need to be the initiator.
Okay.
So that's why I would say that he's more responsive because I think he just goes with whatever I want.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing, and it definitely does make a lot of sense that when you're reading, especially if there is a little bit of like romance and spice, and
Yeah.
honestly, like I would love to like not right now, but dive into that even further with you and like
Oh, yeah.
see like if maybe romance is more your, because a lot of people feel like when there's romance involved, it's not actually a fantasy, but it is actually like a style of fantasy.
Yeah. Yeah.
To kind of want that, even though you may not be like actively like imagining in your brain, in like that type of fantasy, so to speak. But yeah, you are naturally slowing your nervous system down when you go to read a book. And I know that you prefer like physical copy books, so that in and of itself is like I guess, the best way to slow down because you don't have any technology and you're really truly just connecting body to paper and mind to words, and that'll help you naturally like slow down. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So enough about me because I'm sure people are like, okay, get on with it. We could do that another time. But my question actually, while I was like, what am I? What is he? What do you do when maybe one is one or the other, or when two are the same. I mean, there's obviously many combinations that we can have,
Yeah.
but how do you deal with that, right? Like, I'll just use me as an example. Like I said to him, like, I grab your butt all the time. Like it's so cute. I grab it. Like, why do you never grab my butt?
Mhm.
Like, why don't you grab my butt? I've
Yeah.
got a very nice
Yeah.
butt.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And so he was like, I don't know, I just don't think about it. Like, I don't, he's just not, that's just not his thing. Like, it's totally my thing. I love grabbing his
Yeah.
butt, right?
Yeah.
But so when, yeah, totally. Yeah. And he's so muscular and it's very
Nice.
nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
But so my question is when you might have opposite ways or whatever,
Mhm.
even him and I think are different types of responsive, right?
Totally. Yeah.
How do you navigate all of that when you're thinking about desire and just learning how to communicate the language of the body?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I would normalize that it's very typical for two people in a partnership to be on one end and the other on the other end. And just to have desire discrepancy in general is very normal. Um, so that's the first thing that I would do is kind of just like have that be baseline and like work with anything that comes up with that too. But then if we were to dive into like I'll just use an example of two people having responsive desire because that's kind of where we're talking about right now. It would be working individually with both people to figure out what hits the accelerator in terms of desire and what hits the brakes. And that could be two very different sets of accelerators and brakes for each person in the partnership. So that is something that I would do, and we would talk about. Um, I like to say I have something called the three C's. So that's communication, which is the what and the how, context, the where and the when, and then connection, the who. So when speaking with each person, I would dive into each of those. So communication. When you have open, honest communication, that is kind of the best way to start to begin to understand not only your own needs and desires and boundaries and capacity, but also your partner's. So even that example of you asking, like, hey, why don't you grab my butt? You could even just ask for that, you know?
Yeah.
Like if you know you like that, then
Hmm.
asking for it is a great start, right? Because when you
Yeah.
have that kind of like clear and consistent dialogue, that really helps to kind of fill your desire tank over time. And then context. So if you are in a really busy season, if you're drowning in stress from your to-do list, if you kind of feel alone in your household, like you're the one kind of running everything and managing everything, and not only tasks, but emotions and conflict and everything like that. Or you could just be plain like exhausted from your workday. That is like all kind of context that could contribute to either like most what I mentioned will probably contribute to not wanting to be intimate and kind of like stopping that desire from rising. But yeah, the right vibe and the right scene could have you just like running to the bedroom, you know? And then connection. So if you're not feeling connected to your partner, of course, intimacy is probably going to feel a little bit challenging. So rebuilding deep, safe, and secure connection and a solid footing emotionally is something that I help people with as well. So yeah, it's also like very deeply rooted in nervous system and nervous system work and yeah, how safe you feel in your body and
Yeah.
whether you're having like issues with like body image or potentially trauma, like so many different factors come into play when it comes to having sex and having fulfilling sex. So,
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because we have this conversation a lot, my husband and I, around um, what society, the industries, movies, all those types of things tell you what it's supposed to be like, right?
Hmm.
And we talk a lot about how none of that has ever played into our marriage. And that's not necessarily right or wrong, and whatever you choose is perfectly fine.
Hmm.
But that my husband really feels strongly the people he knows that started to have sex early tend to be more, let's just say, explorative. We'll just use that
Hmm.
word in their sex lives. And the people who started later tend to be a little bit more conservative, right? And so when you have desires and maybe perhaps you're on opposite spectrums, if you will, or, not on the same spectrum with how to express your desires or your wants, your needs. Maybe you have past traumas that we're talking about, past experiences that didn't go so well, maybe if you expressed those things.
Yeah.
How does one begin to build the three C's, right? The communication, the context. I forget the last C. What's the last C?
Communication,
Oh, I said
connection, and
connection.
context.
How
Yeah.
how does one build that connection when there's kind of sometimes so much baggage from images and what we think it's supposed to be like? I actually just had this conversation with my daughter the other day about why
Yeah.
it's so important to talk to us about these things. She's 14
Yeah.
when she wants to. I said, because when I was younger and I was asking those questions, I was told a number of times that you're supposed to be doing it per week, and that's unhealthy if
Oh,
you're not meeting that number. And
oh,
like I was telling her, I was like, some of the things you might be hearing might not be true. So like just check in with me if I don't
yeah.
feel like, so how do we deal with that when we're an adult? We've got baggage, we've got all of these rules that we've maybe been told.
Yeah. I think one thing that's coming to mind right now that's kind of wanting to be spoken is to like do your best. And like, this is what I help people with in session to kind of let go of the external voices and begin to, like we talked about in the first episode, come back to your own body, come back to your own ideals, values, beliefs. Maybe some of those beliefs need to be unraveled. I like to ask myself now, like, is this my belief or is this somebody else's belief? Is this my voice? Is this somebody else's voice? So we start with that. We really zone in on what you want and do our best to let go of anything that's come before. And it could align with something that you heard before, but it doesn't have to, because there is no set, there's no prescription for times per week that you should be having sex to have a healthy, thriving
Mhm.
relationship. Like I always like to say, like quality over quantity, like, and are you enjoying the sex you're having? Like that is what's important.
Mhm. Mhm.
So yeah, we talk about what has felt good in the past, what doesn't feel good now, and how to communicate those things because it can be challenging. If let's just say something that's quite common is women faking orgasm
Mhm.
because of performance and not wanting to hurt their partner or reject their partner. And so when we kind of dive into what hasn't been working, it can be challenging to share that this has been going on. And some people decide to share that they've been faking, and some people decide not to, and both are okay, right? Um, Helping
Mhm.
people kind of come to, I guess, gain that confidence to share what feels good, what feels like a yes, what feels like a no, what hasn't been enjoyable in the past, and begin to shift beginning to shift out of that once the honesty has been kind of, I guess, shared in what
Yeah.
feels good.
I'd love to explore that a little bit more because you said it's really common that women fake orgasms, which I've never really thought about because most people don't talk about their sex lives, right? So
Yeah.
it's not like I've heard from my friends, oh yeah, I fake it all the time, So I was kind of surprised by that because that's not something I've ever had to do. And
Mhm.
so my question is that, oh, I almost kind of lost the thread there. Oh, so when one either has I don't want to necessarily say has to, chooses to, I'm not really sure because I'm
Mhm.
unfamiliar with the topic. When they have to, fake this orgasm, do you often find with your clients it's an internal thing, meaning like a lack of self-confidence or embarrassment or shame or something along those lines? Or do you find that it's like the connection that they have, or is it like the external stimulation is not working, like, or is it sometimes a combination of them all? And how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's unique to every person again. It could be a combination of all of that. It could be just based sensation based. It could be, yeah, like they need to go a little bit to the left, and it's scary to just say that out loud sometimes, right? Um, so yeah, let's just say it is that, like it's a sensation based reason. Like maybe they're almost there sometimes and they can feel like and they know deep down,
Uh-huh.
like, oh, it really is just like I need more clitoral stimulation, for example, or I need you to go slower, or I need you to go faster. And like sometimes it's hard to kind of get that voice. So
Mm.
that is something that I help people with as well, is gaining that kind of confidence and fine tuning their voice and helping them express more clearly their
Yeah.
desires or yeah, sensations that they know they want to feel but are having trouble accessing in the moment. And I always recommend to, if it's a regular thing and it has been happening for a while, to talk about it outside of the bedroom and
Mm.
talk about it and ask for permission to talk about it. Don't just like spring it on your partner. It's important to ask and make sure that they're able to receive that and you're able to be in like a as calm of a nervous system state as you can to have those conversations. So
Yeah. Well, this kind of leads me into wrapping up and letting everyone know that next time we're going to be talking about pleasure being a birthright
yeah.
and helping one feel safe and satisfied and liberated in the bedroom. So we're going to be continuing this conversation. So definitely like, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much. I mean, this has just been so enlightening and often not talked about. As you can tell, I'm like, I don't talk to any of my friends about these things, but here I am sharing with the world.
Yep.
Yeah, yes, it's okay. I'm an open book. It's
I
totally
love
fine.
it.
Um,
Yeah.
so thank you so much for anyone who wants to connect with Steph. She's in our community, community.sovereign-magazine.com. All her details are in the show notes below. If you want to come join her book club, please do. It's amazing. Yes. So anyway, we will see you on the next one. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.